All right. Hi. Welcome to Nathan Reads the Bible. This is a special project I am doing. It's my testimony. This is the second part in the testimony, and hopefully, this is all that I need because I'm going to try and make this go as fast as possible. I don't want to get off on all these tangents anymore. Okay, so we leave the Ukraine, we come back to the States, and we first are in Ohio. And that's where I had my heart broken for the first little time. It was really sad. Poor little old me. Got broken up with by the salad bar at Pizza Hut. And that girl got a special hold on me because I was doing everything I could to try and make myself appealing to that girl. As the next few years went by, she became like an obsession almost. Like, not that I like, not stalker obsession, but it became like an obsession to me to be the man that the kid that she found interesting. Um, and so first off, I was open to more and more things that were not of God. And secondly, I thought that doing these kind of things would make me look more mature and cooler because I was starting to get into more rock music, starting to get into punk music, and because I had friends at school that were like, they were passing me, because back then you didn't have Apple Music. You couldn't just look up whoever you wanted to find and listen to. You had to get the music from somebody else, like a compact disc, and play it in your little compact disc player and hope that your parents didn't find it, because my parents would take any CD that they found that was of the world that had dirty content, and they would ruin it, throw it away, or if I told them it was somebody else's, they would give it back to them, but I wasn't allowed to have it. So I developed a kind of hidden record collection that I purchased with little money that I came up with here and there, and would sometimes have the ability to sneak away and go to a store and buy CDs like Rage Against the Machine or Nirvana. I became a huge fan of Nirvana and Kurt Cobain and all that stuff. So all that kind of grunge scene, I was getting into. This is me going from the age of 12 to 14. I'm turning into a skateboarder, which was another thing that became a huge obsession of mine. Finding places to skate, finding new tricks to do, oh my gosh, I loved it. I loved everything about skateboarding. Um, and it made it really easy to make friends. Um, but also, there was a part of the crowd, the skater crowd, that I was a part of. There was a part of that crowd that had drugs. You know what I mean? It's just like there's a part of every crowd that has their contacts to drugs, pretty much. Even in your sports kids crowds, there's going to be like one or two kids that know how to get a hold of whatever. They usually would come to the skaters, or they would come to the gangsters. Either way, there was that element, and I was seeking it out because I was all about doing everything possible to open my mind, I guess is what I thought I was doing. Yeah, I was listening to Cypress Hill, started listening to Cypress Hill, which, if you don't know what that is, it's an old rap group that really glorifies smoking marijuana. And so, I mean, just about every group I listened to back then at, at least probably smoked marijuana in my mind. So if I smoked marijuana, I was like them, which meant I was cool. It's the way you think when you're a kid is crazy. That's why you're not supposed to really mess with anything until you're over 25. That's the advice I would give if I had children. If you're going to mess with anything, wait till your mind's fully formed. And that isn't until 25. But that's it on that. So I was beginning to use marijuana occasionally. I was smoking cigarettes. I was skateboarding. I was becoming a full person of the world. Yes, still had to go to church. I did not pay attention, did not care. I went to Christian schools up until halfway through my 8th grade year, and I ended up getting pulled out because they got kind of harsh on me. They didn't really want me there anymore anyways, because of the fact that I was a skateboarder, and me and the one other skateboarder in the school who was in my grade, the name was Brandon, me and him clicked up a lot, and we were trouble, I guess. So when my mom came to pull me out, they didn't really put up too much of a fight. But what it did was it put me into public school, which for me at the time was like being able to breathe. Because I went there and I didn't have anybody questioning who I was or what I was about. They all knew it because I was a skater. And because at that Christian school, I used to get harassed. There were kids because I had a bunch of Kurt Cobain stuff in my little locker there. And I remember one time I came in and all my stuff had been ripped down by there was a student who did janitorial work after school. I think he was getting paid for it or whatever. But I actually addressed him about it, and he said, "Don't bring that stuff into our school," which clearly states that you are not one of us. You know what I mean? It was stuff like that, man. I was done with that. I was done with people claiming they were a Christian at chapel on Friday that looked at me like I was a piece of trash because I rode a skateboard and listened to Nirvana. I was done with it. I was done with going to church and being gossiped about. I was done with believing pastors' daughters were these chaste, wonderful things, when in reality they were doing all sorts of dirty things with my best friend. That's what happened with that situation. There was just this, and you can tell that I'm still angry about some of these things. Not really angry, but it still brings up those same feelings that I had back in those days. It was bad. And it built up a lot of resentment between me and what I thought was God. But I didn't understand who God was. I didn't understand that the church and God, two very separate entities with two very separate goals and two very separate views on a human soul. That's just my take on it. You can like it or hate it. I don't really care. So, moving forward, I continued going down this path of wrong. I still love skateboarding. I got into high school. What happened was we moved on from Ohio, where we were living, and in Medina, a place called Medina, Ohio, at the end there. And we finally got orders, so to speak. It's the only way I can think of it now because I'm former military. But to what was called the American Indian College here in the place that I live now. And it was a Assemblies of God school for Native American students to help. It was Bible college for Native American students to help, Native Americans who had become Christians become pastors or become missionaries or something in the way of the ministry. So they came here to teach at that college, and I was attending a high school in a place. The name of the high school was Deer Valley, but you'll have to figure out which Deer Valley it is, because I'm not saying where exactly I live right yet. Anyways, so I'm attending high school and I'm just looking for anything under the sun that alters your mind state, pretty much. If there was booze around, I was drinking it. If there was acid around, I would take it. If there was cocaine around, I would snort it. If slowly towards the end, the later years of my life, like the early adult years, there were more often than not pills around. And here there were these pills called Soma. It's a muscle relaxer, and those things were out of control, man. And I was really into those for a while. Basically, what I'm telling you here is I was living on the edge. I was living on the edge of life and death. I didn't know it. I didn't understand it. I did not comprehend what I was doing. I did not comprehend the risks I was taking. But it's why now I know that I have a guardian angel. Because when I think back on all the stupid things I did during those times, because mind you, alcohol was usually in the mix as well when I was younger. I am so lucky that I'm still kicking, and there's got to be a reason for it, because it just doesn't make sense any other way. And to all the mothers who lose kids to reckless drug use like I was doing, I am so sorry if you're hearing this and it's making you think, and I am not trying to glorify it in any way, shape, or form. I'm just telling my story. Those were wild years in my life. I got my act together and quit using anything besides alcohol. If you can consider that getting your act together. What happened was I turned 19 and I ended up getting pulled over, and I received a DUI at the age of 19 years old. I believe my BAC was a .24 something. So I was 3 times the legal limit at the time, and I had some marijuana in my pocket. And little did I know that possession of marijuana in the state of Arizona, even a small amount that I had, doesn't matter, meant you were going to jail for the night. And so the cops kind of held that up in my face, and I remember them saying to me, you would be going home if it weren't for this little bit of stuff that you've got on you. I thought I needed to go pick up my friend when he got off work, and that's how stupid I was back then. That's how, like I said, this is why I am so lucky that I'm still alive, and even more lucky that I never hurt somebody. That's what I'm really lucky for, that I never hurt somebody, because I was a selfish piece of crap. And that's just pure, straight up the truth. I was a selfish, selfish man. Can't say much more on it. I had to grow up and I had to learn more. It's not like I wasn't raised with the right things in me. I knew what the right things to do were, but I had lived in sin for so long at that point and just known this life of drugs and alcohol and just doing whatever you felt like doing, that's just the way that I was living. It was the way my friends were living. It was the way everybody I knew was living. It was the way we lived. When we couldn't find a place to go use drugs or alcohol, our cars became that place. It was some early 90s craziness. Or not early 90s, some mid to late 90s craziness, early 2000s. Things were very different back then. You didn't have an iPhone on you. You didn't have pictures of these things. I mean, you get kids now, man, they video everything they do. If I would have videotaped half the things I did when I was younger, knowing the people that I knew and the things that I was doing beyond what I've talked about, I would be in prison. There's no way. I mean, that's just, I am so surprised more kids don't get in more trouble than they already do with having a phone with them, with the abilities that they have. That's crazy. But I am glad I never had any of that. In fact, I did not get on social media or really understand what it was until I was like 27 years old. Yeah, I was not one of the people who had a MySpace back in the day. I thought it was really stupid. So I guess I was ahead of the curve. So yeah, that leads me into quitting messing around with any real major drugs. Besides some cocaine here and there. Which doesn't make it right either. But if there was something that I was doing, it was that, because I knew it would come out of your system fast and it wasn't pot and whatever. It made me be able to drink longer. That was what I was really after when it came to that substance. What would happen is I would drink and drink and drink and drink and drink and not be ready to pass out, but not be able to really function either. And so somebody would generally find me, really, realizing they called me, when I got to that state, my nickname was Ozzy Osbourne, because I would just mumble and be kind of confused about where I was, or Boomhauer from King of the Hill. The guy was like, oh, dang old shoot, man. Yeah. I was just a waste of a human soul and mind just walking around. But that was cool, and it was cute to my friend group, I guess. It didn't stay that way. They got real tired of it over time. But I didn't, figure it out as fast as I probably should have. So time went on into my 20s. I was waiting tables and I was bartending and I was living on my own with a roommate. I was making pretty good money off my tips. I was feeling pretty happy with myself, and I really didn't think that there was much else to life, honestly, than just working and providing for your day to day. You know what I mean? So I thought that as far as things went, I was doing everything right. And I was proud of myself being, 21, 22 and not being with my parents, I had a place to go back to. And in fact, my place ended up being the place to go back to, because not everybody else had that at that time. So, I was working in these restaurants and we would get off, usually late at night and want someplace to go burn some steam off and party. The restaurant scene is so brutal. If you do not, I don't know what it's like now, but back when I was a part of it in the early 2000s, it was such a party culture. It was so crazy. Drinking was like just part of the way you lived your life, pretty much. Um, so I still kept up, with that. Um, I wasn't drinking to what I would call, what I consider alcoholic levels, because I did not need hospitals yet. So I was not to the point where I was getting uh, detox symptoms. So I could have put the bottle down at any point in time during this time and been fine. Um, but I didn't. I kind of kept it going. Okay. So during all this time, there is these two wars going on. And I screwed myself up to be able to get into the military at first. Because when the wars first broke out, especially like when Iraq broke out, there were just like everybody and their mom was ready to go to war. And they had some of the best recruits you could ever ask for walking through the doors. And so I walked in to see if they could do something for me. And with my legal record at that point in time, what I failed to mention was I scored another DUI at the age of 20, and I did 60 days in jail because of it in uh, county jail, and it was not pleasant. It was not a good place for a 20-year-old to be. But I kept to myself. I kept my head down. I minded my business. I read my books. I stayed out of debt. And I never ran into any trouble. That guardian angel, remember, that's what I firmly believe got me through all this stuff. Without some lasting, uh, some lasting, disabilities. I do have disabilities, but they're manageable. My back's jacked up and I have a fake hip. Anyways, by the time I hit 25, the Army lowered its standards. I'll just say it straight up. They lowered their standards and they made it okay for somebody that had a legal record. What it was I had my DUIs and there was that pesky little possession of marijuana on there. And that's what really cut me out of being able to join the Army. But by the age of 25, I had a cousin that was in the Army. He was doing a tour in Iraq, and he came back, and he was telling me that they were really waving a lot of people in that had legal records at the time. So I went with him down to a recruiter's office, and within a month and a half, I was on a plane to Jacksonville, South Carolina, to go to basic training at Fort Jackson. And I was going to become a mechanic in the Army, which at that point in time was a 63 Bravo. And at 25, I was an old guy joining the Army. But you know what? I surprised the crap out of myself. I had smoked from the age of 13 until when I got to the Army. You want to quit smoking? You want to quit doing anything that you're really addicted to? Join the Army. I swear, I didn't even think about cigarettes. I didn't even think about nicotine. I didn't even think about alcohol. I didn't think about anything besides doing what my drill sergeant wanted me to do. That was it. For those 2.5 months that drill sergeant had control over my life, I honestly believed he had like superhuman powers. I was that scared in basic training. I remember I forgot to shave one day in basic training. Oh my God. This guy comes up, my Drill Sergeant Rosenberg. Whoa. He came up to me and he did this whisper voice thing. And he said, Gray, did you shave today? And I looked at him and I said, I forgot, Drill Sergeant. This was right, this was right before PT. And, which is physical training. It's what you do very early in the morning. So I kind of was in a gray area with the shaving. You're supposed to be clean shaven before you report, but at any rate, he said to me in his whisper voice, it's all right. I'll go ahead and make sure you get shaved a little bit later on. And that was just like the kind of stuff that just like got into my head, man, because I was like, this man's going to shave my face later on. Okay. That's not going to be fun. But it was all what I finally figured out by the time I got halfway through basic and on into advanced individual training was that what they were really doing was just playing mind games. They were trying to figure out whether or not you were going to break under certain circumstances or if whatever they were putting out was too much for you. They were just trying to weed people out. Basic as that. It didn't get to me. I had learned enough about what was going on in basic training from both a really good friend who had been through it and my cousin to know what to do. Once again, it was kind of like jail. Keep your head down, do exactly what they tell you to do, keep up as much as you can in runs, pass your PT tests, and shoot. Shoot as good as you can. And that's what I did. And so I passed basic training, went on, got to go right up the street in Port Jackson to my advanced individual training school for being a vehicle mechanic. And from there, I got stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which is home of the Special Forces and the 82nd Airborne Division. I, of course, did not know from my paperwork, but I was going to the 82nd Airborne Division. They are a huge division of at least 25,000 troops. I believe it's larger now. I think they've added a brigade. I should be more up to date on my old division, but I love that old 82nd. I'll tell you that right now. It was a tough division to be a part of, but it was a place to become somebody, to become something, I guess I would call it. I would say it's weird to even say that because it's not like I walked out of there or it's not like I got put out of there and I left with the leg up in the world, but I kind of did, because being a former member of the military and not having a fully dishonorable discharge, a lot of people look up to, and there are a lot of benefits for veterans, so it really is a leg up. Being a part of the military is one of the better decisions, I think, that a young person with not a lot of if you don't have a lot of options on your table for a higher education or whatnot, doing a few years in the military isn't all that bad. I'll just say that. So my time in the military was interesting, rough, tough, rumble, hua. That was our thing, not hoorah, it was hua. Hua. Hua, we said. No, not the other thing. That's the Marines. The Army takes out the R. We say, what's the need of the R? We just say, hua. Anyways, stupid, not important. But like I said, I really did love that division. I put as much as I could, and I put my all on it for that division. We ended up getting deployed to Afghanistan in the spring of 2009. exactly a year from the date I entered the Army, I was in a combat zone in a place called Tarin Kowt, Afghanistan. Um, I don't want to go into a lot of details of my time in Afghanistan. I don't want to anger any parties that may not enjoy that we were there, but I'll just say that I did my job, and being in Afghanistan changed me in different ways than I thought it would in any way, shape, or form. I wish I could sit here and tell you all kinds of crazy war stories. Not going to get into it. I will say that while I was there, I was promoted 3 times, battlefield promotions, and I have the paperwork for it if it needs to be displayed. Promoted 3 times and received 2 Army Commendation Medals for my service while in country in Afghanistan. So that's really what I have to say about my body of work in Afghanistan. But yeah, that's that. I came back from there, and what happened was I had become a very hardened individual during my time there. I was not drinking, of course, while I was over there. It was not allowed, and it was almost impossible to find. And I was just focused. I was more focused on that than anything I have ever been focused on in my life. Staying alive. Yeah. So I came back from that as a very, very hardened, just didn't have soft feelings, is what I learned what soft feelings are because of the fact that I stopped having them. Because I would talk to psychologists, and they would be like, so you're telling me that you do not have soft feelings? And I was like, what's a soft, what? And that's how I learned about what, soft feelings are, like sadness or, that good, feel-good feeling that you get when you watch a feel-good movie. Those kind of feelings, those are soft feelings. When you see somebody that you really care about and your heart, is, oh man, that's a soft feeling. And I even, during my transition time from Afghanistan back to regular life at Fort Bragg, I received a phone call about my cousin dying. And I remember being such a cold person that I took in the information, and my mom was worried that I was going to go on a drinking binge, but I was just so focused on physical training and focused on, I wanted to go into psychological operations. I had gotten an email about it while I was in Afghanistan, and I went to a meeting about it, and that's what I was thinking about switching over to in the Army. And so, yeah, I got this call about my cousin dying. I didn't even break down and cry or anything like I have since then. At that point in time, it was just like I heard another point of news. I went right back to doing push-ups. And I hate that. I hate looking back and thinking that that's what kind of a person that I had become at that point in my life. But, I didn't even realize that it was weird. It didn't seem weird to me because everybody else was that way too. I keep saying a lot because I'm trying to come up with the memories. So, anyways, I started noticing, as what normally happens when you come back from a deployment, that everybody that I was deployed with was moving on. They were going on about their careers in the army, going to all these different other places, and I was like, well, where are my brothers going? What's happening here? And so I went for the bottle, and I started drinking real heavy. And we were getting a 4-day weekend just about every other weekend at this point in time. And I would drink the whole 4-day. And what happened was I had this happen on either side of my deployment. At the end of a 4-day, I was so drunk I slept through my alarm and missed PT. And so they came and got me and took me into the field or the provost marshal's office, and I breathalyzed and blew a little bit over a .08 and was cited for drunk on duty. I got company grade Article 15s both times, which, if you don't know what a company grade Article 15 is, in the Army, you generally don't even take those with you to your next unit. They stay with your old company. They're not something that goes on your permanent record. It's company grade. It's small fry stuff. But I ended up putting myself in the spotlight during a time when our president had just called for the force to be cut by 40,000 troops or 30,000 troops or something like that. He sent a large portion of us to Afghanistan, then he brought a large portion of us back, and then he cut the size of the force. And I did not know that it was put out to every commander to just go ahead and get rid of anybody that gets into trouble. Pretty much anybody that you can build a case to get rid of for getting in trouble, do it. And so with my case, I was brought in to my first sergeant with my paperwork from the motor pool, and the first sergeant told me, I don't want to deal with anything other than what's happened under this command. And at that point in time, my motor sergeant should have taken out all that paperwork. Not that there was a huge amount of it, but there was paperwork with my old Article 15 that he should have taken with him from my last command. But he didn't, and he left it there. And they ended up using that, even though my first sergeant said he wasn't going to use anything from that command to try and throw me out. Legal told him basically that the only way he could throw me out was to use those two events in conjunction to say that I had a pattern of misconduct. Now, were those two really stupid things to do? Yep. Do I feel terrible for them? Yep. Do I feel terrible that they got me kicked out of the Army at that point in time? Yeah, I feel horrible. It really, really, really smashed me because I didn't know the fire that I was playing with. And that's just the reality of it. I was too stupid. But I'm resilient. And I got out of the Army, and it just never sat right with me. Having my first sergeant break his word to me like that, and some of the other stuff that my commander did towards the end there just really didn't sit well with me. And so I put into the Army Discharge Review Board and got my discharge upgraded to a full honorable discharge. So I am a fully honorably discharged veteran. That's the end of that story. But to go on from there, the way that I was living my life when I got home from the Army was very isolated. I was not going out. I was not doing much. I was not just like participating in anything. And my parents were getting kind of freaked out by it. And finally one night I had a friend invite me out. I went out and had a little bit of fun. Met a girl. That was kind of cool. But I just couldn't, I don't know. nothing felt right to me when I got back. I just felt really alone, and I started working at a Harbor Freight Tools, and I just felt so out of place. It was so weird. I don't know how to explain it. But so I started also attending college on grants, and I went to community college for a little while during this time. Like I said, I was still partying, still running from God. Um, that's, the way that goes. I'm going to skip forward because basically these are just years of my life going by, and if you were to take a camera and just zoom in on what I was doing in my life, it was probably getting myself through work and going home and doing school and drinking a little bit. And then once I got out of school and I stopped working because I got on disability because of my back and my leg, I really started taking my drinking to the next level. And that's when I got to a point where when I stopped drinking, it didn't stop with me. It hurt. It made me feel like I was going insane. My heartbeat would go crazy. I would dry heave for a day or so. I would just sit there and have the worst. It was alcohol withdrawals. I was going through alcohol withdrawals and I didn't realize it yet. But I had a suspicion. And so I started doing some reading up on them and realized that's what they were. So during the course of the years that I was alive after I got out of the Army at the age of 28, for a good 12 years, I lived apart from God. I would go to church with my parents and, go through the motions. I'd go to, not every Sunday, but I would go to church on, like Christmas and Easter and stuff. And at one point during my time running, I had a huge run-in with the law. And that's where I'm going to stop this episode right now. I will see you on episode 3 of my testimony.